is Arcade Arts and Book Festival 2021 online. My name is Elohor Egbordi and I welcome you to my book chat with Buki Papillon. Welcome, Buki.
Hi, Aloha. I'm very pleased to be here at AKE 2021.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Before we
you.
begin, I would like to read your bio briefly, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. Buki Papillon was born in Nigeria. After studying law at Hull University in the UK, she completed an MFA in creative writing at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She has received several fellowships and awards for writing, and she's an alumnus of Key West Literary, Vermont Studio Center, and Vona Voices residencies and workshops. Her work was published in Poet Road magazine and the Del Sol Review. She has in the past been a travel advisor, events host, and chef. Buki currently lives in Boston, where she is resigned to finding inspiration in the long winters. Welcome once again, Buki.
Thank you, Aloha. Happy to be here.
Okay. Today we're going to be discussing her debut novel, An Ordinary Wonder. I'm just going to talk about how I felt reading it. I've read it twice so far. I really enjoyed this novel because the themes in it are ones I find very interesting. It's a social rendering of a child living without love in her life, and it really touched me because I resonated with some parts of Otto Loren's story. So I want to say thank you for writing such a phenomenal book.
Thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad it touched you in that way. That is the best thing that a writer can hear. I'm so glad.
Congratulations on the book being published. How did you feel? What was the first emotion you felt when you received copies of your book? Was it everything you hoped it would be?
It was everything I hoped it would be. So behind me are the two copies because it got published in the UK earlier this year, and then it got published in the US just on the 7th of September. I remember when the box arrived and I realized this was a box of books that I had written, and I opened it, and I was, you're supposed to do this whole thing where, not supposed, but if you want to, as a writer, many writers like to do this thing where you open the box and you're videoing yourself and you record your reactions and your emotions. And I was a mess. I was crying. There was so much happening that there was no question of recording anything. So it was afterwards that I sort of did a little video of me cradling my book like a baby, and then just explaining how overwhelmed I felt. But yes, um, it was a culmination of many many years of work and research and just hanging in there, believing that this book would hopefully one day get its day in the sun, that one day this story would reach people's hearts. And so it was one of the most amazing moments in my life to hold my book and to know that, yes, this exists in the world.
Oh, thank you so much. And Another Wonder is a gut wrenching story of an intersex girl called Lori. She goes through things that no child should have to go through. Why did you choose this particular theme?
Wow, that is such a big and deep and wide question. So Otto, Lori, who I will call Otto and Lori throughout this interview because she is both Otto and she is Lori. So what happened was towards the end of my MFA, I did this study on African deities and African religions and African theologies, and I remember just sitting after doing this. This was just an elective thing that, like we do electives. That wasn't my main course. I just took an elective to continue so I could have all the points that I needed to graduate. And that sparked something because then I think after I'd written that paper and submitted it, I went home, and this very, very clear voice just started talking to me. And she said, "This is my name. This is who I am. This is what is happening to me." And I grabbed a pen and paper and I wrote as hard and fast as I could. It just poured. into me. I think once I understood the significance and the weight of what this story actually was, I had to take a step back and understand that, okay, if I've been chosen, so to speak, to tell this story by Lori, then I have to do justice by it. I have to do right by it. And as you said, the things she goes through are so harrowing, especially at such a young age. There are so many things that I have seen, heard, experienced personally that went into this story. A lot of it I'm not at liberty to really specifically talk about, but I will definitely say that unfortunately, childhood in many parts of the world and in Nigeria is the opposite of what it should be. It should be a time of freedom, a time of innocence, a time of joy, a time of discovery, a time of being protected, of knowing that you can go to the adults in your life and that they will protect you, that they will be there for you, and they will provide for you. Unfortunately for Otolori, this is not what she experienced. She experienced so much that a child should not experience. The story basically had to be told how she told me it.
Thank you so much. Well, this book takes the reader on a journey. You start from when Otolori is 12, then goes back to when she's 5, then 14, then finally 16. Why did you choose this technique to tell this story? And what made you choose Lori as the main character
Ah, very interesting question. So,
and as a
um,
narrative voice?
yeah, so initially, so like I said earlier, Lori chose me. So, I mean, for any writer, there is that moment when a character sometimes just makes themselves known to you. They basically almost seem to appear fully formed. So in a way, I feel like she just literally stood behind me, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Look, I've chosen you to tell this story, so I'm going to tell it to you." So I think that is it. I always maintain she chose me more than I chose her. And then as far as the structure, um, I what happened was originally I actually, at one point, had written Otto's story all the way into America. I had to go back and forth and back and forth. It took me many years to write this novel because I had to go on several journeys of discovery. So, and then as for the structure, it was really a question of I had to write my way into finding what was the right structure. At one point, I had the book from Wura's point of view. Wura is Otto's twin sister. And then from Otto's point of view, at one time I even had Mojisola's point of view. That's their mother. And so I had to go into all of these different journeys with all of these different points of view. So it was in third person, it was in, you know, so it was a lot that happened until eventually I settled on understanding that this had to be Otto's story from Otto's point of view in Otto's voice. And then from there on, I then went to having to figure out, okay, how do I tell this story so that the most important things are put forward earliest? So, because it started out as a linear narrative, it was, beginning to end. And then I saw that there were some things that needed to be revealed about Lori's life before, in her attempt and her desire to become Lori. So we had to see some of the things earlier than later. So I basically took the linear narrative and then cut up my manuscript with scissors. I printed it out. I cut it out with a pair of scissors. I laid it all over the floor. My house was covered in pieces of paper. And then I started arranging those pieces of paper back and forth and back and forth until I was able to make sense of it. So, yes, it was a long journey.
Well, your book is quite unlike what we see in contemporary literature from writers on the African continent, especially writers from West Africa. Laurie is a pretty unique character in all respects. This is not the kind of character that we see all the time. And it's not the kind of character that a lot of readers can say they've read about. So, what made you think about this in a hyper conservative environment such as ours? Why did you decide to introduce the character of Laurie?
Hmm. I feel like you're asking why did I decide to stick my neck out? Which is a very good and very interesting question. There are all these proverbs, The
Yeah.
turtle. I'm trying to say tortoise and turtle at the same time. The tortoise cannot move forward without sticking out its neck, without sticking out its head. So it took a lot for me to have, in a way, the courage to do this because I knew where I am coming from, what culture I am coming from, what family I am coming from. So I had to ask myself some questions. And one thing was clear to me was that this book needed to be out in the world because this voice needed to be heard because it is a voice in particular that has been suppressed in many societies, not just in Nigerian society, but in many societies worldwide. The voice of people who do not conform to the gender binary, their voices have been silenced for so long, for so many centuries, and yet they have existed for as long as we have existed. I mean, we just have to go back to the earliest writings in history, the Sumerian writings. There are examples of non gender conforming people. There have been all through history. So this tells us that, well, if there have been people like this forever, why should anyone want to deny their existence, or why should anyone want to deny their right to exist in their bodies as they experience their own existence? So I felt that it was really vital for me to actually do this and to speak up and to be an ally, because being an ally is not just it should not be just performative. You have to sort of be willing to stand up and do something and say
Take work.
something. And so this is what this book is hopefully doing. If there are any intersex young people in Nigeria, especially in African countries where sometimes support and information is so much more scarce than in other societies, then I'm hoping that they will read An Ordinary Wonder and they will understand that they are perfectly fine and they are perfectly amazing and wonderful just as they are, and that they can do anything and be anyone and should not let anyone tell them who they should be.
Thank you so much. Speaking of perfection, in recent times, a certain Nigerian pastor said that God is a God of perfection and that he does not make mistakes. So, when this pastor was actually saying this, he was talking about transgender people. How do you, as an author, see these sweeping statements?
If they read An Ordinary Wonder, one thing that would hopefully be really clear to them at the end is that they need to broaden their minds beyond their established notions of a gender binary. That is really, really clear. And this question is so big and so broad that I think I'm going to maybe refer a little to a note that I had made because someone had asked me something similar, and I really want to make sure that I answer it with great care. So, like I said, I think by the end of An Ordinary Wonder, the reader is pretty clear about the importance of understanding that, the binary does not need to be so overarching. It is not a norm. We created this norm. And so one of the things that puzzles me continually is why people get so bent out of shape by that idea. I think if people will only ask themselves, how might it be? How might this world be if I simply let others tell me who they are, instead of assuming I know better than the person who is in their body, experiencing their own existence? So I believe that the younger generations are going to be so much better informed. They're going to do much better. I think that sexuality gets so unnecessarily policed, and it becomes such a vexed matter for us humans, and it is just as a result of fear and as a result of othering. I believe that consenting adults should be free to do whatever they want with each other, and it is absolutely nobody else's business. I believe that a person's body remains theirs to do with as they see fit. And again, I think we will get there eventually as a society, as a planet. It is a matter of continuing education. There is this proverb that says that the person whose greetings do not fill my stomach cannot cause me to go hungry by withholding said greetings. And the way that I interpret this proverb, which proverbs play a big part in my book, is that what another person is doing with their body should not cause anybody else who is not living in said body any undue concerns. It is none of their business. So, as to God not making mistakes, exactly, God is God for different people in different ways. I grew up in a family where my family split. I think that was my great grandfather. I'm not entirely sure because my family started out Muslim and then my great grandfather, I believe, became Christian. So my family has always been Muslim and Christian, and and we've embraced each other and loved each other. God, who we call the gods we call to, so to speak, might in the eyes of many be different. There is no mistake. No human being is a mistake. However they are made, however they look, however they appear, whoever they love, whoever they are with, however they choose to present themselves, nobody is a mistake. I do believe that everyone has a right to live within their own bodies and express their love with their bodies as they want, and there are no mistakes, and they can be whoever they want, and they can express their gender however they want.
Thank you. A character that really shows this a lot in the book is Mr. Dixon. I like how he embraces Otolori and just takes him on and just helps this child's life because there was no parental figure to speak of. Let's now talk about the point about of having twins in this novel. I've seen a lot of African novels, both before and more recently, that feature characters that are twins. For example, Chimamanda Adichie's Half of a Yellow Sun and Tolarotimi Abraham's Black Sunday both feature characters that are twins. And twins are usually played as having telepathic abilities, such as what Lori and Wura have. What are you trying to tell us with this connection that they do have? Is it real? Is it very as common in real life as it is in fiction?
One of the things that when Lori spoke to me, she immediately told me I have a twin. I am a twin. So that wasn't something that I had to discover as I wrote the book. I knew that from the get go. So I think it's just with Yoruba people, Yorubas have the highest incidence of twins in the world, right? And then in Igboora has even four times more twins than all of the Yoruba combined. And in Igboora there's this twin ceremony every year, right? So if you're a Yoruba person, especially, I mean, there are lots of twins in Nigeria, but especially if you're a Yoruba person, you are related to a Taiwan Kende, or you know one as a friend, or you work with one. Everyone who is Yoruba knows and has communicated with a Taiwo or a Kende or both at some point. I mean, we have Taiwos and Kendes in my family. We have so many. So it's sort of a fascination because all my life I wished I was a twin. I sort of always felt like I was missing somebody. So I've always had that fascination with twins, and that having someone who has always been with you, who has always been by your side, to have never been alone, to have never been lonely. I find that fascinating. So I think with the telepathy between Otolorin and Wura, I think we don't use, our senses, us humans are limited. I mean, imagine the way a dog can smell things that are, we can't even imagine, or the way that owls can see far at night, or bats, or just all these extra senses that we have. So my theory, which is Buki Papillon's personal theory and not scientifically backed up in any way, is that twins are so attuned to each other. Their senses are so much more heightened around each other because they have been together from the womb. They have been, they've been for 9 months. They were enclosed in the same space. So I feel like that is sort of it is less of a, or maybe less of what we understand to be telepathy, and maybe more of just being so attuned to each other. I will tell you a story. When when I was a young girl, I think I was about 10, and I can't, anyway, I was with these twin sisters who were friends, and sort of I didn't know them very well, and we'd all been given lunch, and they wanted my lunch in addition to their lunch, right? So what they did was, without saying a word to each other, because we were all together, I never left them for a minute, we're all together, they just sort of backed each other up, and before I knew what was happening, they'd synchronized and talked me out of my lunch. They talked me into giving them my lunch. And it was so, years later I would think about how they just didn't say a word, but they were communicating very clearly. They were talking to each other and they said nothing. And I've seen, other examples of this where twins just seem to, just, they can just read each other so well that it looks like telepathy, I think.
This is very true. I've seen this also play with siblings that grew up together. I know this because my sister and I are like that too. And we are not twins.
Oh, that is special. That is so great. You're lucky.
So, still on the topic of twins, let's talk about family.
Hmm.
Family, or the lack thereof, plays a very big role in this book. I'd say the lack thereof because I don't think Lori had family.
Hmm.
Personally, that's what I'd say. I don't think Lori had family. At least not family that counts. We still cannot count Mami Akinro because
Yes.
she doesn't count. She doesn't count,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
why?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But families in Africa, they deal with normal altercations and misunderstandings as a family. But when they are confronted with a situation they don't understand, they are not interested in learning about it.
Mm.
Does
Yeah.
it make them more susceptible to breaking family ties? For example, when Wura sent these articles to Mojisola and mother, I was saying, read about this, to learn about this. Mojisola was just not interested. What does this say about the family unit, the African family unit?
Starting from the point of Moji and her refusal to actually to open her mind and actually be willing to change. This, I think, many families encounter this because and this is not just a Nigerian cultural thing. This is families worldwide. The way families function in many ways is, there is the one who makes everyone laugh. There is the one who gets angry easily. There are roles. You can, when you can observe this when people go away from home. Say a family of say four children, and they've all gone to get married, to go to university, but then they come back home to their parents' house, say for a holiday, and you can see them fall into those roles again, the talkative one, the quiet one, the one that, so everyone plays these roles within family, and once these roles are entrenched, it is, if one person tries to change that dynamic, it means everybody else has to change. And we know one thing that human beings do not like and are very resistant to is change. So for Mojisola, it is really that she needed to hold on to a certain belief in order to justify her behavior and her actions. And she'd gone so far with her behavior and her actions that asking her to now change would mean an acknowledgement of just how terrible she has been. And for her, that is a step more than she can take. So Otolori's family is, like you said, Otto didn't have family. And that is because of all the betrayals that everyone had experienced. I mean, the mother was absent, and she was absent because she herself had, in so many ways, been betrayed and let down. And so, many people react differently to situations. I mean, you'd read stories of people that shared their bread, because they'd give them so little to eat, and you'd read of people that took the little they had and still shared it, and then you'd read of people that tried to kill other people who were in that camp with them for their own little crust of bread. And that is the thing, the way people react to trauma is so different. Some people are able to overcome it and try to use what they've experienced to help others. And sometimes the trauma is so much that some people just give in to what might be called their worst nature. So I think all of these are the things that came to bear on Lori not really having a proper family of origin. And as for Mami, I found her character so interesting to write because I needed to go again deep and then understand who she was and what her own issues were and where she was coming from. And just to try and give her a redemptive arc. It comes, it's not a lot, but at the point where hopefully it was vital, it mattered. Not to give too much away.
Yes. When you said it was not a lot, I was like, yes, it was nothing. I mean, give me nothing.
I know, right? Exactly. Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, Lori only had two family, and that was Mr. Dixon and Derry.
Yes.
That,
That is
that's
interesting
all.
that you did not mention Wura. Do tell me. This is interesting. Now I'm going to be the one asking you the question. Tell me how you felt about Wura then.
I think that Ura was torn between her mother's love because her mother loved her as fiercely as she hated Lori. So she was torn between her mother and her twin.
Yes.
So I feel like at some point she just got tired of being the buffer
Yes.
and she just said, you know what, you can go.
Yes.
Because she was still begging her mother and Lori was telling her at the end that this woman is not going to come around, but she was still very hopeful. So she really, really loved her mother. I feel like two siblings can be in the same house and have two different childhoods. I
Yes.
mean,
Oh, I'm glad you said that.
this is what played out in the novel. So they were in the same house, but they had different perspectives. So if someone had asked, "Wira, how's your home life?" She would say, "Beautiful, wonderful." But Laurie could not even send. He could not even bring the letter home for his mother to sign because he knew he'd be dead.
Yes.
He
Yes.
had to forge a signature.
Yes.
So that was really touching.
Yes.
How he would rather die than let his mother know what was wrong with him in school
Yes.
because he knew
Yes.
he did not have that support.
Yes. Yes.
And
Wow.
this book also teaches me that blood is not thicker than water.
Mhm.
There's a lot in this book that tells you that water can sometimes be thicker than blood, and
Yes.
that it takes just one person to care to
Yes.
save a life,
Yes.
literally and figuratively.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was Mr. Dixon for me. I feel like school needs most schools, more schools needs somebody that can just help a child. When you see a child that is sinking, someone that cares enough to just step in to
Oh,
help.
yes.
For example, Godwin did not have that, and I'm
Oh.
glad
Yes.
I'm glad Mr. Dixon was able to provide that for Larry, and that was definitely my favorite part. Do you agree that sometimes water is thicker than blood?
Oh, yes. I have to say yes. I do agree that sometimes water is thicker than blood. For many people, especially many people in the LGBTQI community, they have, they have to go outside of their birth family and find their tribe and find family because rejection is so unfortunately common. And so sometimes yes, blood is not thicker than water because I mean sometimes people get so betrayed because family cannot bear to accept people as they are. And it has to do with society and with status quo. Once things start being more acceptable, people change their minds. These are all things that are, that were created. And so it is possible to change society and to change people's minds. And that's what I'm hoping an ordinary wonder will do. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that they grew up in two different households because that is also common. That I can speak to um, having seen a household where one child was being treated so much differently than another child, and then they tell this, and I've been told stories in confidence where one child was being abused, and the other child vehemently denied that anything took place, and that was the brother of the girl that was being abused, and would just no matter what, just refused to accept that their uncle was doing that. And in the end, this person basically had to cut off all connection with their brother and stop talking to their brother because this reality was too much for the brother to accept. And it's not that the brother didn't know what was happening, but the brother could not. In order for him to be able to wake up and face his own self in the mirror, he had to deny it because the thought that this was happening to his sister and he did not protect her and he could not protect her was more than anything that his own psyche could handle. And so and so this is where families then would need help, outside help, counseling help, to say, okay, this happened to your sister. It's hard for you to acknowledge because you could not protect your sister. But now the thing you can do for her is to not deny her truth and her reality. So that fascinates me. People growing up in families and then having different experiences of the same family, and then people having to basically, because their own family will not acknowledge the things that they experience, having to just go outside and find a family that they can truly rely on and that they know that will have their back no matter what. And so, in a sense, that was what I wanted Lori to have, a family that will always have, her back no matter what. And hopefully, that the family that had denied her reality before, some few members of her family that were, that had denied her reality before would also be willing now to see who she is and to help her on her journey to living her full life.
Okay, thank you for that. Still on the subject of family, I will tell you that my least favorite character is Mami Akinro.
This is so fascinating.
Just
So do tell. Yes, this
she's
is
my
so.
least favorite character because
Oh,
I feel like
mm,
she's one person in the book that knew what was going on from the onset.
yes,
She didn't need any convincing. She was not being brainwashed by her bully,
yes.
but she just let Laurie stay there. I feel like
Yes.
this book upends everything that one believes to be normal. I
Mm,
mean, Mami Akira, she just mollycoddles her son, so she
mm,
understands the mother's love for a child.
mm,
But when it gets
yes,
to her grandson, she doesn't do enough to
yes.
challenge what Lighton is doing to was doing to Lori. So I don't understand how
Mm,
this even makes sense, the irony of it. Because yes, she felt indebted to her son. For whatever reason, she felt indebted to him. She felt like she owed him something. But I feel like she did not do enough for somebody that said she cared. I mean, I'm glad she said she was not apologizing because she was too old for apologies. Because that was one hell of an apology. I'm just wondering why is this irony? Why would she love Lighton so much and say
mm,
she loved Lori and not show it as much?
mm. You see, this made me emotional. What you said, because this goes deep into my own personal roots, which I am not going to talk about. I'm afraid. Not all grandmothers are benign. I don't know. It's so funny talking about grandmothers. I watched a movie just this weekend. It's about Enola Holmes, Sherlock Holmes' sister. It was just this whole made-up story about if Sherlock Holmes, the detective in the stories, if Sherlock Holmes' sister was a detective too. If you've not watched the movie, please look away now. This is a complete spoiler. But in the end, it turned out that it was the grandmother that was trying to kill her own grandson,
Hmm.
and you could not have seen it
Very
coming.
sounds very familiar.
Yeah, right? You could not have seen. I was so struck by this ending. You could not. We thought it was everybody else who was trying to kill this young man. So it was the mother, it was the grandma, and it was because she was trying to protect certain establishments, certain, the way things should be. The things that people do in order to preserve the way things should be. All of us completely forgetting that the way things are were put in place by someone. They were not always like this. somebody at some point said, this is the way, whatever rule, oh, it's only boys that should inherit, their father's property or their parents' property. Somebody made that rule. This was not always so. Whatever has been made can be unmade. So, but when people have grown old and with a certain idea, getting them to separate from that idea can be the hardest thing. And some of them would go as far as killing their own grandson in order to keep things how they believe things should be. So, but one thing that because I needed to understand the character of Mami Akinro, she was so complex. I mean, I had to write her home. I had to write her living her life. I had to know who she was and why she would behave like this because I figured that this was going to come up. This exact, that how can she be so contradictory? And I think at the bottom of it is the power of the patriarchy. It is so strong. She, the things that happened to her own husband, the things she had to live through. Remember, she wasn't alone in this. There was family that,
Yeah.
deserted them. There were things that she experienced and went through. And then she has this son. And there is also one more element, and that is fear. Lighton is a horribly scary person.
Yes, I was scared of him.
Yeah,
And his
Lighton is
enemies were disappearing. It was very scary.
yeah. She knew that she could have a dead grandson or a grandson she ignored. And she had to choose, you know, between those. It's like, am I going to have a grandson who is dead? Because my son is unpredictable. I cannot control him. I do not know what he might do. Or do I have a grandson who gets to live, but I ignore him? At least I try, or something. So her choices were very hard. And I wanted to make it like that. I wanted to make that choice so very hard. And this might be a little bit of a spoiler. So sorry to anyone, but yeah.
Yeah, they can't really tell if you you can't really tell if it's real or not because we just say this specific.
So this is why I love your take on Mami Akinro, and this is so interesting that this is how you feel. That is really.
I
I'm
was just
glad that
angry.
we got to discuss it.
The first time I read this book, I was walking on the road one day, a few days later, and I saw this small boy about 4 years old, very light skinned, with a head of locks. And I was looking at this child, and I said to myself, I know this person.
Oh,
I know this person. I was also until I got home when I realized that I was seeing there is somebody in real life. So this happens to me whenever I read a book. I immerse myself in the characters, right? So
yeah.
when I see pink and it's pink, a cake shed into pink and blue, I'm thinking of, ooh, somebody's 12th birthday.
I
So when I,
love it.
so when I saw Jerry, I
Oh,
didn't see Jerry. So when I saw this boy, I thought it was
oh,
Jerry.
oh,
And now
that
the
is
boy is called Jerry.
so
So I'm wondering, does this happen to you too? Seeing as you are the author, does this happen to you that you see your characters in everybody and in everything, just in your regular day-to-day life?
I I don't know that it does. So what has happened to me is that yes, I have seen characters. I have seen characters where I have actually yes thought, oh yeah, you. If there was a movie of an ordinary wonder, you would be Mami and you would be Derry and you would be Babalawo and you would be this person. Yes, it does actually happen to me. Yes, it's just that I'd never consciously thought of it, but it does happen. Yes, yes.
It happens to me all the time. And my second reading of this book made me appreciate the proverbs a lot more.
Oh,
Yes, I really did like that part. What influenced the addition of the proverbs to the book?
so just like author like Lori, I've always loved proverbs. I literally do apply them to my life, just like she did in the book, because I think they're so full of wisdom. It's like distilled wisdom. and I find that they also, I find them comforting. I feel like we don't really use them enough. I feel like we have this whole I feel like just like people read, their religious texts, whether it's the Bible or the Quran or the of other religions in the world. Just as people read those, I feel like they should carry books of proverbs around and read them because they have so much distilled, wisdom. You can find advice for things you're going through in life. For example, I still remember every time somebody you know snubs me, or maybe they say something mean or whatever. I just remind myself, the person whose greetings do not fill my stomach, cannot cause me to be hungry by withholding said greetings. So okay, fair enough. Everyone to himself. Or there's a proverb that says, we like to eat smoked fish, but while the fish is smoking, surely we must eat something else. So that is a proverb that is about, yes, plan for the future, but make sure you enjoy today. Make sure you are
Wow.
living today.
Oh wow. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the proverbs in the book. So I'm glad I read the book and I will give it a third and fourth.
Oh,
Happy tree.
wow, that is the best compliment. Thank you.
You've done such a great job and I'm so glad I got to have this chat with you.
Thank you. I'm so glad I got to have this chat with you too, and I'm so glad that this book gets to be out in the world, and that all the LGBTQI people all over the world, especially in Africa and the diaspora in Nigeria, get to read this, and that it gets to give them courage, and it gets to hopefully and help them see that they are wonderful, they are amazing, they can live wonderful lives.
How readily available is an ordinary wonder worldwide?
So Another I Wonder was initially published in the UK by Dialogue Books, and Dialogue Books is part of Little Brown Publishing. They distribute it all over the world, I believe, including South Africa, the African countries, Australia, and the UK, of course. And so that's the pink cover is the UK cover, and this is the US cover, which is published by Pegasus Books, and so it's available in the US as well. Pretty much, and I believe I've seen it in bookstores in Nigeria everywhere. I know that a couple of bookstores might have tagged me on an online post that they're carrying it. So it's in bookstores in Nigeria everywhere. It's in bookstores in many African countries. I think I've seen that it's available in bookstores in Kenya. I believe I saw it in one, and in South Africa, and basically everywhere in the world. I believe it's quite easy to get your hand on a copy of An Ordinary Wonder. And
And those covers are so beautiful. I can
thank
see the
you.
UK cover reminds me of Lori's dress, the one
Yeah.
the one she nicked from Mura.
I know, right? Like, she was always nicking Wura's things, like sisters do, right?
Mura got fed up at a point.
Well, you know how it is. You have a sister. When your sister is always taking your things, when you're a young girl, you're not very
I
happy,
know, even now,
right? Right?
even now.
Leave my things alone. Uh-uh.
Okay, it's
Oh.
been lovely having this chat with you. We're about to round up. Finally, should we be expecting something from you in future? What are you working on at the moment? Is there a sequel to Lori's story?
Wow, right now, as of now, there is no sequel to Lori's story. Maybe that will happen one day. She's gone off to live a wonderful, hopefully, amazing life. So maybe at some point after she's lived that life, she'll come and tell me all about it, and I'll be able to write about it. But in the meanwhile, what I am doing is I'm writing several books at once, because it took so long for me to get for An Ordinary Wonder to be out in the world, because I had to, do other things, work, and so on. In the meanwhile, I was writing so many other things. So I have several things in several stages of development, about three different books. And there is one I'm really, really excited about, literary fiction as well, and I'm in the process of writing it. I should be, I can't say any much, I can say much more than that, but yeah, it should be hopefully something that people who have loved An Ordinary Wonder will enjoy reading as well.
Oh wow, I can't wait to read that. And just in case you're looking for sequel ideas for An Ordinary Wonder, please, Lori and Daring story. I want to see that.
Every
Now
now
I've
and
turned to
then.
Daring. I've turned to Daring. If anybody likes me, they have to. If you can't just say I like you have to say quite madly yes, quite insanely. That's the only thing I've expected now. Nothing else. Daring has set the standard.
Oh, that is wonderful. People have just fallen in love with Darren, and I really wanted that romance aspect to be there. So I'm really glad that it worked, that it came out. Because Lori deserves some really good romance. So yeah.
So
Oh,
we'll come to the end of the book chat for Arcade Festival 2021 online. I've had Buki Papillon with me all for the last 1 hour, and we've had such a great time discussing her debut novel, An Ordinary Wonder. To learn more about her, go to www.bukipapillon.com and go to the bookstore nearest to you to get An Ordinary Wonder.
yes,
So
indeed.
make sure you get your hands on it. And let's find out if you love daring as much as I do.
Thank you so much, Ella. This has been really excellent. One of the best interviews that I have had. It has been really great and a pleasure and a joy to discuss An Ordinary Wonder with you and to be on Ake Festival 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Let me introduce a new wave, we change the rules. A new app that you can use. Wanna change your life, then choose. Save money and invest. Pay bills when you decide. Safe and secure for you when you need a loan. Request it. One bank for you, one bank for me. So chill and enjoy the ride. Stop the current account on it. One bank.
One Bank by Sterling. Open a current account and start transacting.
That 5 minutes madness only you can understand. Visit myspectre.com to get your Spectre experience. Spectre, loans in 5 minutes.